Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever the fuck you're tuning in. This is another episode of Backyard Buckets, brought to you by Backyard Sports. We've got 2 weeks of NBA action in the books, and we are going to talk to you a little bit tonight about some of our initial takeaways, maybe some overreactions in the frame of Splash or Trash. We'll bring that segment back, but we're running a two-man game tonight. We don't have the three-man weave going. Bentley's got some prior commitments, but how you doing, Ryan? Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm good, man. It's always good to be here. I know that you and Bentley put in a lot of pods every week. And I'm glad to have my niche here. Honestly, y'all could all take off. I'll just I'll, I'll host and ask myself questions.
We'll set you loose for 90 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, poor people. I'm sorry. The views are tanking as you say that. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. So hey, man, I want to start off. Let's talk a little bit. What we talked a bit last week about kind of our initial takeaways from the first week. Has anything changed for you in the past week? What are some new things that you've noticed over the last 15-ish days of basketball that we've had? Anybody sticking out to you?
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff. One thing I think I'll give my thing. Uh, hey, Dad, how's it going? Uh, One thing I'll say that I really missed. If you remember in the off season, I ripped Atlanta for the John Collins trade. I was pretty negative about it. I'll say, almost as negative as how I feel about the Heat, and Atlanta's looked really good. Atlanta has looked very athletic on the wings, quick. Uh, John Collins, I think, as good of a player as he is, because I still think he's a good player. I do think there's some limitations because he's kind of like he's a big four that probably like in a perfect situation should be a small ball five, but is not like the greatest defender. So he's kind of like a tweener a little bit there. And I think now they're running their traditional wings and the Okongwu Capella like rotation at the five, and they look good. Jalen Johnson's getting more playing time. He's looked really good. We talked about that a little bit. I think Sadiq Bey is legitimate. He was good in Detroit, but is now getting playing time in Atlanta. So they look like they can cover people better on the perimeter. They look like they. Yeah, I'm a very small ball five.
Very small ball.
In the 6 foot and under league, I'm a small ball five. uh, but yeah, I think I really missed on that. I think that was a good move by their front office after seeing them play quite a few games. So I'm going to give them their kudos because I really think I bombed the assessment on. I thought they gave him up for nothing, basically. So good on them for making that move, and they look a lot more athletic. And Murray and looks good as well, which I think he's kind of blended with the team finally.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback off your point about the Hawks and looking better than I think we all kind of thought they would. I don't think any of us really praised the Collins trade. It seemed a little perplexing in some ways, but as you mentioned, Sadiq Bey looks much better in Atlanta than he looked in Detroit. Now it's only 2 weeks, sure, but he looks much better in Atlanta than he did in Detroit. And I think we all thought he had potential, but Detroit's in a weird spot right now, right? They're in kind of perpetual rebuild until they figure out who their 2 or 3 guys are going to be that they're going to build around. And now he's got an opportunity in Atlanta to run with kind of an up-paced offense, and it seems like he fits pretty well there. But DeJounte Murray looks really good to start the season, and we know what we're going to get from Trae Young as long as he stays healthy. But Murray's looked really, really good. On top of that, to even go further with the piggyback, one of the things I've noticed so far out the gates is we talked about the West and how we thought there would be, maybe like 12 teams in the West that could be competing, and there wouldn't be much separation from the top to maybe the 8, 9, 10, 11 spot that we thought potentially there could only be a few games. I was a little more bullish, and I thought it was the Nuggets and kind of everybody else. But you and Bentley were in pretty good agreement, and I agreed from about 2 through 10. I thought, right, we could be a couple of games separated. It looks like the East might be that in a way. Yes, there's obviously there's some separation at the top, but there's 10 teams in the East right now that are at or above 500. including the Heat that you mentioned a moment ago. That I think we're all pretty down on them, but the West actually is a little bit thinner when it comes to teams at or above 500. I'm a little surprised by that. I thought that the East would really find separation at the top with the Bucks and the Celtics. I didn't expect the Sixers to be this good out the gates, and I don't want to spoil our splash of trash for later, but it feels like the East is a bit deeper today, right? I don't know that that's going to play out over the whole course of the season, but today, through 2 weeks, it feels like the East is a bit deeper than the West.
Yeah, and Cleveland is not at 500, but that's another team I expect to be in the mix as well. So really, like 11 teams.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
Toronto's probably overplayed a little bit. Orlando's look pretty good. Like the Pacers look good. Like all the teams that we thought would take like a jump have jumped, and the teams that maybe we thought might decline have kind of held serve a little bit. So yeah, it has been interesting. And Cleveland, that's another team I expect to be, like I said, in that mix as well.
Yeah, that is the surprising one, at least through 2 weeks, that Cleveland is below 500 right now. I don't
Yeah,
expect them to finish that way.
that's injuries, I think, mostly there.
Sure.
Jared Allen
Sure.
and Garland and stuff. So
Yep. Yeah, Garland makes that offense kind of move.
yeah,
Uh,
a lot quicker.
yeah.
They get a little static sometimes. So.
Yep. Yep. For sure. For sure. I want to shift over to the Western Conference. I kind of want to get your thoughts. Dallas, and I know Corey just mentioned Kyrie and the flat Earth thing, but 6-2, they were the last undefeated out the gates. One of the two last undefeateds after I believe they were 5-0 before they took their first loss. They're 6-2. They've scuffled a little bit here in the last 3 games, but they were among the last teams with an unblemished record. They look like they've kind of got this thing figured out with rotation. Do you see this as sustainable for them after 2 weeks? Do you see this being at least what we can optimistically expect from the Mavericks going forward?
So Luca and Kyrie, they are the people who make the team go. I always thought they were going to be fine, right? Even in their short span last year, they looked good on the court together, right? And a lot of people are like, how do they fit together? Because you have the heliocentric Luca and Kyrie, a guy who likes the ball in his hands. Kyrie has played with heliocentric players, so I wasn't really like super concerned with that. Like he's played with a lot of guys who are just as heliocentric as Luka is.
Yep.
He's played with 2 guys who are like that at the same time
Yeah.
for a very short period, but he has done that.
Yep.
I wasn't concerned. The concern with them was what do the fringes look like? And we talked a little bit about a show. Derek Lively's looked really good. Derek Jones Jr. has been incredible. I've always watched Derek Jones Jr. and been like, wow, that guy can jump out of the gym, and like that was about it. he did enough to stay on the floor in a lot of places, but he was always a fringe guy. He's started all 8 games. He's playing 22 minutes a game. I think he's averaging 9, 2, and an assist. Like that's a lot. You don't need a lot from those guys, but just like playing good defense, being athletic, like being able to jump. I mean, that's what Derek Lively's doing, right? Jump, stretching the floor vertically. Derek Jones Jr. also does that. A guy like Grant Williams was a really big pickup. I think he's looked really good, and he's getting some of the most open shots probably of his career in the games I've watched. Like he's just there, and it's like, oh, Luka broke down the defense, and Grant's just
4 guys collapsed on Luka. Grant
yeah,
was wide open.
Yep, in the corner. So I think great pickup. Hardaway Juniors look good. I think their rotation's good. I think Powell and Maxi Kleber were always pretty solid. They weren't like amazing length guys, but I always thought they were solid. So I like this team. Josh Green's getting the minutes I think he deserves. I think this team has guys. It was just, can they all do it at the same time, right?
Sure.
And it looks like they're able to. I think there were a lot of question marks over, can all the rotation players be a part of the rotation effectively? And the fact that Derek Jones Jr. is doing it is, I mean, that's about as positive as a sign as you can get, because that's not a guy who's really been a major contributor most of his career. He's been a guy on the fringe for a long time. So maybe that's a compliment to Luka and Kyrie being able to get those guys involved effectively, especially probably Luka more than Kyrie, but Kyrie too. But man, they're making Grant Williams and Tim Hardaway, and those guys look really good. And you don't need to be able to do much to be around those guys.
Yeah, I mean Hardaway, he's been on some bad teams in the past, and right now he's shooting as high a volume and as high a field goal percentage as he's ever shot in his career, and it's clearly been a boon for Dallas as they sit at 6-2 right now, second place in the Western Conference, but behind the 81-1 Denver Nuggets.
A couple more games, they'll be there.
Yeah, I do want to give a shout out. One of Bentley's guys right out the gate, Mark Williams, is leading the league in field goal percentage at 83%. Probably not sustainable, but
why not?
He's shooting 83% through the first 2 weeks of the season. Pretty wild. What else you got, man? What's something else you want to highlight here through our first 2 weeks?
I'm going to talk about a team I don't like, and that's the Utah Jazz. So I've had an interesting relationship with the Utah Jazz historically and this season. Historically, because the Rockets hate them. And we've always hated them, basically since the 90s when it was, competitive in the Western Conference and they were one of the dominant teams. And we obviously won 2 championships in that time period, but they eliminated us many times. The Stockton Malone team. So I have a personal hate of the Jazz from my 4-year-old days when they were knocking us out of the play. I was upset then too. But I'm going to give them a positive. Their record's bad. They're 2-7 right now. But I think they just made a really good move, putting Keontae George as the starting point guard. I think that was a move that makes a lot of sense. They're so big and long. I don't think they needed another big, long guy to play the guard position. Like George is a smaller guy, but can score, can facilitate it, to guys who are better scorers than him. He wasn't that big.
More length.
He's only like 6'6". Let's calm down.
Yeah.
I think putting Taylor and Horton Tucker and having him run with the second team, the Jordan Clarkson, Taylor, Horton Tucker as the primary facilitators was, I think, was a rough experiment. But I really like the Keontae George thing. I think that's going to make them a better team in the starting lineup. And it's possible he's not in the closing lineup, especially as a rookie and a rookie guard. But I think that was a necessary move to try to right the ship a little bit. So.
Yeah, I like Keontae George. I liked him coming out of college. I think that is a good move for them. I think he can give them a dimension that obviously Horton Tucker wasn't giving them. I understand, right, why they went that route. I think the Lakers waited a long time for him to make good on what should be a high ceiling, right, because of his length, his athleticism, but it just doesn't seem. I don't think he's got first team minutes potential anymore in the NBA, right? I think you're absolutely right. Him running the second team with Jordan Clarkson or on any team, right? It doesn't have to be with Jordan Clarkson, but I think he's a guy that is going to stick in this league as a first, second, third guy off the bench long term. And I think Keontae George, as one, has starting point guard potential in the league, and 2, I think it's time to figure it out, right? Because at 2-7, the Taylor Horton Tucker experiment wasn't working, right? So, especially coming off a season last year where the Jazz, in a lot of people's minds, drastically overachieved, right? After the whole fire sale with moving Mitchell and moving Gobert and really looking like they were in full rebuild mode, they won probably 15 more games than a lot of people would have given them credit for last year. So, yeah, I think you're right that it's time to figure out what they've got in terms of a potential starting point guard in Keontae George.
I think it reminds me of and what I thought about when they're huge, right? Like they play almost three 7-footers on the floor at the same time, right? Like it's close to it. I think it's like 3 guys over 6'10" in the starting lineup. I was like, why not play the smaller guy? He'll just disappear.
Yeah.
It'll be like, it'll be like Darren Sproles. It's like, oh, Keontae George is at the rim. Like, when did he get there?
Whoa,
Like,
where'd he come from?
so I just that was my immediate thought was like it's like a running back behind like this front line of just massive guys. Because like how many massive people do you need in the starting lineup? So yeah.
For sure. 6'10 plus plus plus.
Oh yeah, you'd love the Jazz. Just watch a Jazz game. They
Yeah.
roll out 7-footers
It's
like it's
like
nobody's
it's an
business.
assembly line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Uh as a jaded Wizards fan, I want to point out that there is a silver lining in the Wizards' misery to start the season. They are
5,
2
2
and
and 5.
2 and 5. Okay. However, they've hit the over in every game. We might cash in checks
Yeah.
with the Washington Wizards on the overs. We are 7-0 on overs in Wizards games. So let's keep that going. I'm on it again. I believe they play tonight or tomorrow night. They play the Hornets again. The over went up 2 points. I'm still gonna be betting it. It's 242. It was 240 the other night. Last night, we hit last night. We'll hit again on Friday.
It's the infinite money glitch. We talked about it in the
It
group
is.
chat.
Yep.
If
The
you
infinite
just
money
if you
glitch.
just roll it, like if you've rolled it, what 7 games now?
You're looking at
Depending on where you started, you've got a lot.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I,
You're up.
you're
You're
also
up a few
risking
units.
quite a bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. You're just letting it roll.
But you're only risking your initial bet, like
Right,
fundamentally,
exactly.
right? Like
It's all
that.
house money at that point.
It's the gambler's thousand. That money's not mine.
Right. It's win
It's
money. I can
it's
just gamble it.
yeah. I take out what I put in and I push the chips in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I want to circle back to this. I know a lot of people that feel this way, right? With LeBron and kind of how he left
Yeah.
the first time and then how he left again the second time going to LA. I think there's a lot of people out there with a soft spot and some sentiment for wanting to see Cleveland succeed. I know when he left the first time, I was one of those people. I wanted to see them win games. It didn't work out until he came back because he left. They didn't get anything for him, yada yada, and it was a complete and utter debacle there for a few years. Dan Gilbert was trying to recover, and then eventually was trying to like swap teams to own the Pistons and give up. It was a mess
That
until
was
LeBron came back.
that was the thing people did like back in the day. They would trade franchises.
Yeah,
So
it's crazy.
if you read about like 50s NBA, it'd be like, oh, this owner was like annoyed that he had to live, in Fort Wayne. So he was
Yeah,
like,
he
I'm gonna
traded to the Kansas City Monarchs.
yeah, so he could be in another city. It's so weird.
Yeah,
Like it's crazy. Also, Cleveland. What I always, Cleveland has like a sad history outside of basketball too, right? Like
yeah.
football history.
The only river in the world that's flammable.
Yeah, yeah. Baseball, even like they've struggled, in a lot of things. What I love about basketball though for Cleveland is they have a rule named after them called the Stepien rule. Which was the owner of the team at the time. He wanted to, make his team good. This was in the late 80s, 90s, early 90s. And he was like, I'm trading all my picks to like bring in guys, right? They were still not good. And so not only were they not good, they had no picks.
No picks.
So now you can't trade consecutive first round picks.
That's because of Cleveland. I didn't
Yeah.
know that was the reason why. I knew the rule.
Yep.
You can't
Yeah.
can't trade your own pick 2 years in a row. But
Yeah. You can do a swap, but
sure,
you can't trade it straight up. You can't trade unprotected, right?
That's interesting.
Yep, it is because of Cleveland. It was like the Mark Price, like Cleveland teams, like before he got there.
Mhm.
And yeah, so there's the there's some more like bad basketball history for because that sucks, right?
They
You're
made a
like,
rule to protect them from themselves.
yeah, they were like, we gotta, this guy's got. But like, if you're a GM or something, like that rule's annoying, right? Because you're like, I want to keep my job. Like, I'll punt all these first round picks because I need to win. Yeah, today.
Go get Michael Jordan or something, right?
It didn't even work though.
Yeah. Oh man. All right, what else you got? 2 weeks of basketball here. What else we got?
Oh man, I have, I'm looking at like standings and just trying to like conceptualize some of the stuff you were talking about with where teams are at. And some of these teams, it's I always wonder how legitimate something is, right? Like
Yep.
the Pelicans have a -7 differential right now, and they're 4-4, so like that kind of makes sense. But they're giving up a lot of points. Their defense looks god awful, and they're not scoring enough points for their god awful defense. Um, Things like that are just kind of like weird because I don't think the Pelicans should be that bad defensively. Like Zion's bad, and but like Valanciunas like gets in the way. Like he's not a good defender, but he's like not an awful defender. But they look bad, giving up 115 points per game. It's pretty rough. You you're not Spurs level bad defensively, but you're
You're
not
in the
super far
neighborhood.
off. Yeah, for a team that on paper you think CC, get Zeller in the game, the defensive maestro Cody Zeller.
Guy.
Yeah, he's a hustler, that's for sure. I just think there's a lot of guys overperforming, and I think it's starting to level out a little bit, but. I do think some of the differentials and some of the numbers are interesting to see who can sustain it for a long period of time. Like, is this Indiana? Like, that's a question I think still. Like, even though all of us were pretty bullish on Indiana, like they're giving up 121 a game, but they're scoring 126. It's like, is that a sustainable? Like, are they going to continue to score 126? Like, I don't know. They probably will continue to give up 121, but I don't know if they'll continue to score one. Their defense is bad, and I have some concerns with that. But
they do have one of the best names in all of basketball, though. Benedict Mathurin is one
it's
of the
best. It's a great name. Yeah, it's a great name.
Yeah,
I like a lot of Indiana names. I mean, Jarris Walker I think is like a pretty good name.
Cool. I like the way it's spelled too. It's unique.
Yeah, Obi Toppin, like that's
Obi,
just,
ain't no Toppin.
that's just like a cool name.
He looks good too. By the way, in that offense, they're just up and down the floor. He fits right in, not playing defense, but he looks pretty good in that offense.
Yep. Yeah, he always reminded me of like him and Hachimura always reminded me of each other. Toppin's like more vertically athletic than Hachimura is, but I was always like, okay, like kind of short arms, but like super wide, like broad shouldered, like they move people and they jump. It's like Hachimura is like the less athletic version, but like he has like more skills.
He's a better mid-range guy as well.
Yeah, well, he's shown that in LA. I don't know where it was in Washington, but maybe it was playing time more than anything. But he's always reminded me of Hachimura, and I'm always like, that's like a guy, but you don't want to be relying on him. I think the Knicks did the right thing, probably moving on. But I don't know. Julius Randle is been so bad. Maybe they want Obi Toppin back just to be like, let's get a guy who doesn't shoot because that's better than the guy who does.
Yeah. Julius Randle is.
He went from a guy
who wouldn't shoot and was always just trying to bang his way to the bucket to a guy that he just has no conscience anymore.
Yep.
It's wild.
Yeah. I want to look at what his splits are right now because they're pretty crazy efficiency. Okay, so he's playing basically 34 and a half minutes a game, right? Now this is a power forward who is generally considered like a pretty good offensive player. He's shooting 31% from the field, almost 26% from three, 66% from the line. Like that's not terrible for like a power forward. It's not good, and is leading the team in assists. He's contributing in other ways.
Right. But I mean, as you can expect from those splits, they're 4-4, right? When your best player is shooting 30-ish% from the field and less than 30% from three, you're going to struggle because he's your guy that's going to take the most shots.
Yeah, and I like that. I've actually been I was convinced, I don't know who gave the argument, but I was convinced of the Knicks being like a pretty good team. I don't remember who said it. I was just listening to something, and I was like, you know what? They are like, they're all competitive. Like every guy there can play. Like Josh Hart. I liked Quentin Grimes a lot as a guy who 3-and-D guy that was really valuable over there. And I'm like, man, they don't have like a superstar, but they just like get it done. And Tibbs he like loves those types of guys. And I thought they would be a tough. I was convinced. I always thought they would be decent, but you look at them and you're just like, who's the guy? But they don't really.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Randall thinks he's the guy, but if they can level out as a team, like they got like a 04 Pistons vibe kind of.
I think that offense, and I don't know if Tibbs would ever, I don't know, put his thumb on the offense, because Tibbs has always been a defensive guy and defers. Like, okay, you guys go figure out the offense. I'll let my assistant coaches handle that, and the players can play. But I still feel like that offense needs to run through Barrett more than it does. And I don't know if they ever will make that decision or make that distinction, because they paid a lot of money to Julius Randle. But there's times when Randall's not on the floor and RJ Barrett is kind of the focal point of that offense, and they look like a fairly efficient machine on offense, but it's never for sustained periods. It's never something that they make a concerted effort to focus on. But I don't know. I feel like if the Knicks would do something along those lines and maybe take the ball out of Randall's hands a little more, it might be a little more efficient offensively.
Barrett's shooting 47% from three so far this year.
Yeah.
It's crazy for him.
That's got to be a career high by about 14 points.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, that's about what I would think too.
Oh man. Gonna give Bentley another little shout out here. He wanted to make sure we mentioned Trace Jackson Davis, who he's talked about a couple of times on the show. Steph Curry came out this week and actually sang his praises. Loves his work ethic, loves what he contributes. Not a big stat filler, averaging, I think, 4 points a game and like 2.5 rebounds or something along those lines. But he's a guy that is a contributor defensively, especially, but also with that second unit is getting some decent looks and quality run. They've been singing as the vets there. Steph Curry was kind of the most vocal this week, but all the vets are talking about him and Dubchevsky. We talked a little bit about, or Pudchevsky, sorry, Dubchevsky. Brandon
Pudjemski.
Yeah. Pudjemski. We talked a little bit about him in the lead up to the draft. He's looked
Pokusevsky. Too many of those guys.
Yeah, so fucking many of them to try to keep the names straight. Yeah,
like Polish names or Eastern European names.
Yep. But Warriors, it seems like they've got a little bit of a young core to complement some of the veteran players, and they seem to like him. And I know that Bentley's a big fan of Trace Jackson Davis. Said he got stuck watching a lot of Indiana basketball last year in his college basketball viewing. So that's where TJD stuck out to him.
Yeah, he's just stealing my take from the last show. It's fine. Pretty normal of him. Not a big deal. I expect it. That guy hasn't had an original thought in 20 years.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
I told him I was going to take a jab at him at some point in the show, so I hope he's listening.
Oh, all right, man. Let's see. The Suns scuffling at 500. When they get healthy, is that going to be a dangerous team when they're healthy? Have you seen enough from them to think that they're going to make it work there with the three kind of monster superstars that they've got once they're healthy?
Yeah, I think even with just Durant, they've actually looked like halfway decent. Obviously, Booker's been there for 2 games, but Durant's been there for every game. Guys like Eric Gordon, Grayson Allen, the Watanabes, Nurkic has looked like relatively healthy.
Yeah, let's knock on every piece of wood we can find for that guy. Holy cow!
Yeah,
he looks pretty good right now.
Yeah.
Which we expected, right? But health is obviously the number one concern for him.
Yeah. He's averaging 10 and 9.5 rebounds and almost 5 assists. Like that's for a team like that, like that's all you need. And he's a big body. He's a big dude, right? There was one point the Nuggets thought he was better than Jokic, so like it's clearly like he's not just a pushover. Like I was worried that he was not healthy because he's been hard to watch the last 2 seasons.
Yeah,
because he's been slow and
plotting.
Yeah. But he looks relatively spry for Phoenix, so I'm hoping he's healthy because I think that helps him out a lot. And Eric Gordon, one of my beloved former Rockets. He's been great. He can shoot the ball. Was he averaging almost 14 points right now? Like he's playing.
I know we
Uh,
talked about this in the group chat, but man, is he not like every old head at every YMCA across the country?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's a better shooter than all of them, but yeah,
Oh,
like,
for
yeah,
sure.
he has a similar play style with like he uses his body a lot. Like his handle's like real rigid, but it somehow always goes past the guy. Like
Yep.
with he uses his shoulders really well to like move a guy out of the way. Yeah, I love that guy. He's a Rockets legend on those hardened teams. He was the sixth man on a lot of them and starter at some points. But yeah, I think they have the guys. If they can just tread water, I think they're fine. Like this is like they're 500 with Booker playing 2 games and Beal playing 1. Like you got to feel pretty good if you're Phoenix, right? And,
Yeah.
and to see the rotation players get time is probably really valuable. It's like, hey, this is like these guys can play, right? Because there's some question marks about like a Jordan Goodwin or a Josh Okogie. Like we know they can play a little bit, but are they a championship team contender or are they just a guy, right? Watanabe is another one, right? Like we think he can be a championship contender, but is he one is the question. So I think this is giving him a good opportunity to feel out their rotation until they get Beal and Booker back. And they need those guys because they're so thin, right? Like
Yeah.
we talked about that. Like they've increased their chances of failure by going to such a star-heavy lineup.
Yep.
Because if one gets injured, it becomes a problem. If two get injured, like we have right now, Beal came back 1 game, but like he's not fully back. But if we were injured, we really have a problem. So
Yep.
I think they need these guys to contribute. And Durant hasn't been like fully healthy for. He's been healthy, but like he has like lingering like leg issues every now and then. So
Yep.
we
For sure.
definitely need that. So.
You mentioned the Pacers in the East and kind of whether or not they're sustainable. I want to talk about a Western Conference team that sits in third place right now at 5-2. Are the Timberwolves sustainable? Do you see this? Is this the Timberwolves team we should expect the rest of the way?
Oh God, that's a tough question. I thought about that a lot today because they look really good on paper as far as what their metrics look like. The one thing I did see is guys are missing a lot of open looks against them just from like the analytics side of things. I think the percentages of open looks is like I think they're like either lowest or second lowest in the league. That's not sustainable. Like
Law
eventually,
of averages dictates otherwise.
somebody's gonna like hit shots against them, but they still have a 10.6 differential. They're actually best in the West
Yeah.
differential wise,
Yep.
and only giving up 101 a game. Like even if you add 4 or 5 points to that, like they're still like an okay team, right? Like are they a top 4 team in the West? The fundamental question. I don't think so, but like I remember last year saying I could see this team working when they brought in Gobert, and a lot of people were like, "There's no way 2 bigs will work like that because Towns is not going to defend." And I'm like, "Well, they don't really need him to defend because Gobert is there for that, right?" And Anthony Edwards is doing enough to make them look pretty good. I still think there's question marks about how they fit together, but Edwards, I think, has finally figured out how to deal with 2 bigs and like where they fit because that was his big complaint. Like, I don't have any space like to get to the rim because there's like a guy there like on my team that's in the way. Uh, I think he's starting to figure out where his game is there. So could they sustain it? Probably not defensively at this rate, but like again, just a few more points given up. Like they're still a 5, 6 seed, like at that rate. So
Sure.
that could they avoid the play in? Yeah. Are they probably going to be in the play in? That would be my guess. Like, but obviously if they can sustain people missing open looks, they'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a tough one to say they're going to sustain.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, before we get into splash or trash, you got any alibis you want to bring up before we do so?
No, I don't think I have any off the top of my head. I just wanted to bring up one old reference, an old baseball reference, actually, and I know you'll enjoy this. So, Harden is traded to the Clippers, right? We all know this. Everybody who pays attention to basketball, people who don't pay attention to basketball, probably know. And I was watching him play his first game, right? And it's the starting lineup is Russ, Harden, George, Leonard, and Zubac, right? And my immediate thought was, man, Zubac has to feel really weird out there, right? Like that's 4 Hall of Famers. And Zubac can play. Like I'm not like hating on him. Like he's he's probably above half of the league's centers. Like he's probably like right in the middle somewhere. And my immediate thought was they remind me of the 2011 Phillies starting rotation.
Oh yeah,
And because
Hamels and Halliday and
yeah,
on down the line.
Roy Oswalt, Cole
Oswalt.
Hamel, Cliff Lee, and so it was 4 guys who were like Cy Young guys for like a lot of their career, and then it was Joe Blanton.
Yep.
Who was like fine, like
right. I was gonna say like he's a middle of the road, probably a third starter on most teams in the league.
Yeah.
He's the guy on the end of the bench with those 4 guys on that rotation.
Yeah. So I thought Zubac reminded me a lot of Joe Blanton.
Joe Blanton. That's a great reference. I love it.
And I remember reading the Sports Illustrated article when I think it was Cliff Lee and Roy Oswalt went there because Halliday and Hamels, I believe, were already there.
Yep.
And Oswalt went from the Astros to there, and then Lee went back to the Phillies. He had been there before earlier in his career. And I remember looking at it was all 5 of them on the Sports Illustrated like cover, and it was like these 4 are great, but like don't like not think about Joe Blanton. And I was like, that guy has to feel so weird in that picture.
Yeah.
Because it's like Roy Halladay, Hall of Famer, Cliff Lee, not a Hall of Famer, but was like a Cy Young caliber guy. Cole Hamels was like a fringe Hall of Famer, probably, if he would have stayed healthy. Roy Oswalt, if he was played outside of Houston, he's probably a Hall of Famer because he gets a lot of flack for not being on like winning teams for a long time. Yeah, but he was by far the best pitcher there. Yeah. Like Joe Blanton's just like, why am I in this picture?
Yeah.
and Zubac, same thing. Like the starting 5 picture is just
Blanton was also like this big corn-fed country boy too.
He was just a goofball. Yeah. Yeah. I looked up his stats when I thought of this, and I was like, oh, he was pretty good.
Yeah.
He had like a 4.3 ERA. He pitched 427 games. That year, he only started 8 games that year. I think he was hurt, but
really?
The next year he won 10 games. Yeah, so 2012. And then he was with the Dodgers. they got rid of him.
Yeah. Nice. All right, bud. Well, let's jump into it, man. A little splash or trash. So this kind of segues nicely from your discussion about the 4 superstars in Zubats. We'll start off first with Splash of Trash. The 76ers are better off without James Harden. What do you think, man?
Well, first I want to say in our over-under show, I took the over on the 76ers.
You did. You were the only one.
And I said, even if Harden doesn't play, I think they hit the over. Yep. Now, it's very early. So we got a long way. Yeah, they're on pace for a lot of wins.
Yes, they are.
Very early, but I feel pretty good.
They're in the 81-1 category.
Yeah, it's a small category, but they're in there. I think maybe giving Maxey the confidence to do his own thing, like not have to. Like he likes to play off the ball because he's pretty quick, right? But now he's got that on the ball, like going to his left pull up 3 that he likes. That he gets. I think he's going to get to a lot more, and I think he should take more of. Like he's probably still a little passive because he's played with Joel Embiid and Harden. I think he's like, getting used to being the second guy. Tobias Harris can play. I say this every show. I love Tobias Harris. I think he's one. People hate him because he makes too much money, which is true. He's on a max deal, but like that's not his
The
fault.
NBA, man.
Like that's not his fault. Like he's averaging 19, 6 and 3. Like that, he's
That's
good.
pretty solid.
Like he's good. Kelly Oubre Jr. has been a revelation. Like he's been a great signing. They signed him really late, which is crazy because he averaged 20 points a game last season, and
Yeah.
he like on a bad team, but he didn't even
20
get a
points,
look.
20 points.
Yeah, D'Anthony Melton's been solid. Like Paul Reed's a good backup big, like energy guy. And now they got like 9 veterans who are like maybe still serviceable. The Robert Covington,
Yep.
Nicholas Batum. If you could combine those guys, like man, that would be one like pretty good. But they're all the same player at different sizes.
Yeah.
But I think they can play a little bit. I think Jaden Springer's got like potential to be decent. KJ Martin, I think, is like another energy piece. Used to be in Houston that I like. He was getting almost no playing time with the Clippers, but he's an undersized forward that can play a little bit. This team might be a better team without Harden, and I hate to say that because I'm a big James Harden advocate during the peak of his career, but he might be driving teams down too much now with his personality, and his skills don't back up that personality anymore. You can get away with that when you can lead the league in scoring and assists, and like get 6 rebounds a game or whatever, right? Like you can do that, but he's not that guy anymore. And maybe the Clippers can like keep him in line because they have the other guys who are the guys. But yeah, I mean, I think the 76ers look a lot better. I'd put them top 4 in the West for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to splash this as well. I am surprised how much better, at least through 2 weeks, right? Of course, right? Small sample size, but how much better they seem to look. It's almost, we talked a little bit about the addition by subtraction piece, right? It's almost as if like during the offseason, they had all this stuff about Harden, and I think everybody was kind of trying to walk on eggshells not to like say or do or give the wrong impression because I don't think anybody really knew how this was going to play out. We didn't hear a lot from Embiid, didn't hear obviously from other people. It was mostly Harden and Daryl Morey in the news and in the public and in the media kind of going at each other, more Harden going at Morey. Which is understandable because that's Harden's personality. He's been that way almost everywhere he's been, right? Once he's over an organization, he's over an organization. He'll go fat suit on you. But it, yeah. But it does feel like once the decision was made internally, and it almost feels like Philly kind of made this decision without publicly saying we're done with James Harden, but because they've come out the gates as if they were a team preparing to be without James Harden this year, and they have it figured out in terms of what Maxi's role is, how it works with Embiid, and then all the other pieces you mentioned that just kind of fall into place. And it does feel like they've got some pieces on the end of the bench that there's still something there in terms of how do we squeeze the most juice out of this. And I agree. I do think that despite how great James Harden is and has been throughout his career, this does feel like a better team without him.
Yep.
And I know we got some action in the comments here.
Let me guess where this one is going.
Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned it, Ryan, right? He may be just bringing teams down with his attitude, and he doesn't have the play to kind of overcome that, right?
Yep.
Potentially. And yep, they do need Mo Bamba.
Yeah, that's where that's going. Yep. Yep.
For sure. All right, well, to kind of again segue, splash or trash, it's not working for the Clippers. Right now, the Clippers sit at 3-4, 10th in the West. And I'm going to be honest, they're on a 3-game losing streak right now, all since the trade, I believe, or maybe the first loss of that sequence was just prior to the trade. But they're 3-4 right now, and it doesn't look like good basketball. I've watched a couple of their games over the last about 4-5 days. I think they played twice in the last 5 days. I think I've caught both of those games, or maybe it was one of the games prior, but it doesn't look like great basketball right now for the Clippers. Splash of trash. It's not working for the Clippers.
Oh man, this is tough, right? It's so early. It's like it's even earlier than the early season things. It's because it's yep. First person to ever say that.
Ever.
You go on Twitter, there's about 4 trillion people saying it, and they have been for the last 7 years. uh, it's really tough because it's so early. Like I said, it's even earlier than the rest of the season, right? We have what a game and a half basically of
Basically, yeah.
Harden. 2 games. He played 33 minutes a game. He's gonna have to do some off-ball stuff, I think, for that to be successful. I saw a clip of him catching the ball in the corner and just like pump faking and dribbling, and it's like, just you're wide open,
Shoot
just
it,
take
man.
the shot. Yeah, like Paul George is gonna get you some open looks every now and then. Like Russ is, like guys are gonna get you open looks. I do think the problem is in the backcourt with that team. Yeah,
Mason Plumlee with the
Plumlee's
MCL
down.
sprain.
That is also the big problem. Yeah, that and the backcourt. Sorry, I don't want to take away from Plumlee's prowess, but um, yeah, I think Westbrook and Harden at this point in their career don't really match well together. They never really did, but when they were in Houston together, they were closer to their peaks. So it was like not such a bad thing. Like Russ wants to work in transition. He wants to be Russ and like get to the basket like quickly. Harden wants to do the exact opposite. He wants to play in the half court,
He
right?
wants to beat the shit out of the floorboards.
Yeah, and Russ doesn't like want to play in the half court because he doesn't want to shoot, right? Like he doesn't want to take threes, which is understandable. I think blending them is really tough because of that. I think Houston like figured it out eventually by basically playing all shooters. Like they got rid of all their bigs and we're like, we're just going to play a bunch of stretch fours instead, right? And that worked. Like they were a competitive team doing that, but I'm not sure that like Russ and Harden are good enough anymore to do that. So yeah, I think Russ has to go back to the bench for this to be successful, and I think that is a personality issue. Now, not with Russ. Like I understand Russ not wanting to go to the bench. Like he's a Hall of Famer. He doesn't really feel like it. Uh, I just think that's the only way that team is going to get out of the mess in the backcourt that they have.
Real highlights.
Real.
Zubac's getting real highlights.
Zubac is good.
Yes, he is.
He's a Joe Blanton.
Yes. Yeah, I'm with you 100% on this. I always thought that Russ was going to go to the bench after this trade.
Yeah.
It's clear to me that wasn't their plan now, right? But I thought it was. And you mentioning that reminds me. So I watched the first game after the trade, but Harden didn't play in that game because I believe it happened like on that day. And then I watched their last game that they played, and it's out of sorts, man. It is out of sorts, and I know it's the first couple of games, and they've got to figure this out. But like you just mentioned, and we talked about it last week, right? When the trade broke, he's never played with this sort of roster composition. And I don't think that his style fits this sort of roster composition. I just don't, because this is very much as you put it, right? He's going to be off the ball and he's going to get these passes where he's going to be wide open and it's just going to be spot up James, knock down a three, right? That's not his game. His game is off the dribble. His game is getting to the free throw line or making a play for somebody else. And that's not who they've got in terms of this roster composition. So for me, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to splash this and just say that, like, I don't anticipate them fixing this. I think we're going to look back at the end of this season and say, man, the Clippers really, really messed this thing up by not figuring out the personalities, the roster composition, and how this thing was going to fit together. They just went and just got another superstar. And it's almost like it's gluttony at this point, where you're just trying to put as many stars on the floor as you can. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say now that I think by the end of the season we're going to look back on this and say, yep, it didn't work. It didn't work for the Clippers.
I do want to say I have yet to answer splash or trash to any of these. I just say something. I've splashed both of these, by the way. I do agree. I fundamentally think the same thing. So.
Yeah, for sure. All right, moving on. Splash or trash. The Bucks defense is really bad.
Oof. Currently, yes. They have a negative differential mostly because of their defense. I don't think they'll be bad forever, right? Like part of the issue is Dame is adjusting to a different scheme. When he was with the Blazers, he didn't really have to play a lot of defense because they needed him on the other side of the ball, so he just didn't do a lot of that. And they designed coverages to like cover for that, right? Like if he gets caught in the pick and roll, the big was coming up to support off of those. Now the Bucks are going to play drop with Lopez and Giannis, and it's like you got to fight over those screens, like because this is the NBA. If you just give up on the screen, they're just going to shoot.
You're just gonna knock them down.
Yeah, like it's not you can't go under or you can't not go over, right? Yeah, they should play both at the same time, honestly. Yeah, that help them out. When you go over the screen, it's not really to contest. It's just to make the guy uncomfortable. It's like, hey, I'm here, right? Like
get him off his spot.
Yeah, make him think about it. That way, the guys in drop can just like hang out and prevent the roll, and they can be there to contest the shot. But if you don't do that, I mean, we're just talking wide open threes after wide open threes. Like like guys like Jason Tatum will have a field day against that. And Jason Tatum's not even a great pull-up three-point shooter, but he'll take those. Him and Jaylen Brown all day. Yeah, I mean they're gonna just stop and shoot. So yeah, that's probably the big problem. I think their other problem is they're a little old. Like Lopez is old. He's 35, I think. He might be almost 36 at this point. Like at some point, like some stuff is going to tail off. Like his is a lot of like timing and balance and length, right? So some of that is not going to go away right away, but it is like slowly. All of it. Like eventually the athleticism catches up to you, no matter how unathletic you were to begin with. Not to say he's unathletic, like length and balance and all things are athleticism. Just like he's not a guy who blocks a ton of shots because he jumps out of the gym, right? Like it's a timing length thing. Chris Middleton, another guy who's like been hurt, right? Like he's not necessarily old, but he's hurt. It's a concern. Like if you don't get buy-in from Dame, like that defense could continue to be really bad. So I'm going to say splash. They are currently really bad. I don't think that Dame is going to
trash this long term.
Yeah, I'll trash it long term because I think Dame is going to have to look himself in the mirror and be like, I got to do something. Robin Lopez is 35, then Brooke is too.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I mean, I think Dame has too much pride in his game to like just give up on the defensive end. It's just not a muscle memory he has, right? Like he hasn't done it in 10 years, so it's like, I don't remember what I'm supposed to do in these situations. So.
Yeah, I think those are all fair takes. I also disagree with those takes. I think that Dame is done on the defensive end, and I don't think he's ever going to get it back. I don't think he's ever going to get to the point where he's willing to exert the amount of effort that it takes to get over screens and play the style of defense the Bucks play. As you mentioned, he got into habits with Portland because of the way they played defense. One, it's hard to relearn something like that, but two, he's not a spring chicken anymore. And three, they brought him in to be the offensive guy that Dame Lillard has been throughout his career. I'm going to take a small victory lap here. And I'm going to say, like, when they made this trade, I was on this show and saying, like, I didn't love it. And I was in the other group chat with some of the other backyard folks where Flint Mode is in, and he's a big basketball fan. And I was saying the same thing. Like, the Bucks didn't need more offense. They finished second in the league last year in offensive production. They're going to take a big hit on the perimeter defense because that's what Drew Holiday is. He's one of the best perimeter defensive players in the league, and he can cover against a lot of lineups in the East. He can cover 1 through 4. And he's done that for the Bucks, and he was the missing piece that got them their championship. I understand why they made the move. You have to capitulate, and you have to give Giannis that warm fuzzy to keep him around, because he's your guy. He's your superstar. I'm not faulting the Bucks for going out and making this splash move, but right now, I feel vindicated about my take about this trade, because this is what I thought this team would look like. They're going to have to score 120 to 125 points a game in order to win a good number of basketball games against some really good offensive teams in the East. I don't think that works for them in the playoffs. I could see the Bucks being an early exit in the playoffs, unless they make some moves or bring some guys in that are going to be able to kind of make, or maybe they've got to change up a little bit of how they play defensively. But as you mentioned, they're old, and they can't necessarily do those things in terms of changing up the defensive scheme. And they're not going to ask Giannis to do more, because he's already doing everything, basically. So yeah, for me, I'm splashing this now, and I'm going to splash this long term, that I think this is who the Bucks are. To quote the late great Denny Green, they are who we thought they were. And this, for me, could be a problem for them over the long term of the season. And I just don't know that I see improvement on the horizon. And I could see the Bucks, like I said, being an early exit in the playoffs, because I don't think you go into the playoffs as a team that needs to score 120 to 125 points and think you're going to be really successful in the playoffs.
Yeah, you need a top defense traditionally to win championships. So.
Yep. Yeah, and it is a long season, 82 games. You know, it is a roster they've kept together for a long time, but they are getting older. Middleton has been nicked up. Middleton is not the most durable guy over the last handful of seasons. You may not even have him come stretch run time. So it is going to be interesting to see if they do make some changes near the deadline to bring in maybe some 3-and-D guys that can rotate and maybe take some of that stress off of the perimeter defense. But right now it doesn't look great. Doesn't look great defensively. All right, splash of trash close to your heart, buddy. We didn't go as extreme as we joked about earlier, but the Houston Rockets are a playoff team in the West. Splash of trash. Because right now, for anybody who hasn't looked at the standings recently, they sit at 6th in the West at 4-3. And I don't know how many people that weren't making homer picks would have thought they'd be 4-3 out the gates.
There's a good thing there's no homer on this podcast. For everybody listening, the original prompt was, are the Houston Rockets the greatest team to ever exist in their current iteration? And I would splash that. No, I believe we were originally going to say, are they a top 4 team in the West? Which a little bit of a meta joke there for people who have watched for more than 1 week. I think right now it's really these are all tough, right? Like I don't think the reason we're asking these is because a lot of these are down the middle. Boban's great.
Boban.
His vibes, he curates vibes as good as anybody.
Yes, he does.
Great commercials too.
Oh man,
I think
this Toby bag, this Boban bag.
Yeah, that's great. The biggest problem with Houston's record currently is they're on a 4-game win streak, right? They start 0-3. They got blown out by Orlando, which I don't recognize as a legitimate game. Pretty sure there was some type of cheating going on. Orlando's trash cans or something were used. I'm not sure.
Sign stealing.
Yeah, they did something.
Connor Stallions was on the sideline of the Orlando Magic.
Yeah, something happened. But they've won 4 in a row, right? But the last 3, right? They beat the Lakers. Anthony Davis did not play. And they beat the Kings twice. De'Aaron Fox did not play. So it makes it really tough. You got to play who's in front of you, of course. You can't do anything about that. But I I think that I have to splash that they're going to make the playoffs, but I don't see them staying where they are. I think they're a play-in team that's going to give people trouble defensively. Uh, but yeah, I don't think they are in their current spot, but I do think they're a playoff team. So.
Pure efficiency. 6 and 7 in 6 minutes.
He actually his like per 36 historically is crazy. He has like one of the highest per 36s because he only plays like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
When he was with like San Antonio, I think he had like the highest per 36 like efficiency like at his position in the league. So
yeah, he just never gets there.
Yeah, because he can't play for more than like 3 minutes. He's he's huge.
Exhausted, yeah.
Like he's not just long; he's heavy.
Big.
Yeah, he's like big. 280 or something like that. He's real big.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm gonna splash this at this point. I like what I've seen from Houston. And then I look at what's behind them in the standings, right? And I'm not sold on the Clippers. The Kings, I think, will pass them. The Suns will pass them. The Pels, I believe, will pass them. But outside of that, I don't have 10 teams right now in the West that I say, yep, they're definitely going to all pass, right? The Rockets. So I do believe that we're looking at a play-in team. The Lakers right now, I'm really sour on the Lakers. I was sour on them coming into the season. I said I would bet they're under heavily. I thought they were going to be quite a bit under their win total. And I don't think the Spurs, the Blazers, the Jazz, or the Grizzlies, I'm losing faith that even after John Morant comes back, that the Grizzlies are going to figure this thing out. They've looked really, really bad out the gates, and I don't know that Ja fixes all of their problems. So I'm with you. I think we're looking at a play-in team that could give some people problems. They could probably win and end up getting a series in the West. And I don't know that they'll knock off, the 1 or 2 or 3 seed, whatever they end up playing against, but or the 1 or 2 seed. But I do think that they are capable of getting into one of those first round series, getting through the play-in games and actually playing a series against the 1 or 2 seed. And that's where I think that their ceiling is, but I also think that they're pretty close to that ceiling right now, at least what I've seen from them out the gate. So
yeah, it's going to come down to, can they maintain the defense that they've had? Their defense looked really good, and Ime Udoka, I think it was like that's the only way we're winning games. Was and Fred VanVleet, a lot of people are like, he's too small. He has some of the best hands in the league. He pokes the ball loose. He fights defensively, right? Even when he gets like guys try to like back him down.
That's that Wichita State mentality.
He's not giving up. Dylan Brooks has been a revelation. People hated on Dylan Brooks, like he's not good enough.
He's easy to hate on.
Yeah, I get it. He's you love on your team, you hate to deal with him outside of your team, but he's been great. You could argue he's been the best player for the Rockets all year, outside of Şengün probably. And Şengün, I mean, looks incredible. Like he hasn't had to play.
Everybody's gonna know by the end of the season.
Yeah, I think that there's an argument he's like the second best center in the West right now.
That's not a stretch.
He's probably top 4, but but like outside of Jokic, who's like in his own universe, like is it Sabonis and like Şengün? Like Şengün might be better than Sabonis right now. Sabonis is stronger, but Şengün's more skilled at probably everything. Like rebounding is his only disadvantage, which like obviously as a center that's like a big deal. But he might be a top 3 center in the West, and like that's a big deal. And they run their offense through him. And if that offense can just be average, like this team probably makes the playoffs, because that's their concern is scoring the basketball, because they're going to shut people down. But can they score the basketball and rebound? So really interesting, more interesting than I thought the season would be, for sure.
Yep, for sure. All right, we are going to go way too early overreaction here with Splash or Trash, but early in the season, Scoot Henderson has not looked the part. So Splash or Trash, Ryan, Scoot Henderson is a bust.
I'm going to trash this. I'll start off by saying how I feel before I like to mix it up every now and then. I think logically everyone would have to trash this, right? Like you said, it's so early. let me pull his stuff up because I want to see what he's actually.
Yeah, he's
I
at
have,
28 minutes a night, but
yep.
8.8 points, 2 rebounds, and about 4.5 assists and a half a steal.
Yeah, played only 5 games, right? Like
And only played 5 games. Yep.
yeah, his efficiency is not great. 35% from the field, roughly. Nine,
10% from
no,
under
nine,
10.
nine and a
Under
half.
10, yeah. I rounded up and gave him too much credit.
Yeah, he's not in double digits.
No.
I don't expect that to continue.
Yeah.
I expect guys who are not shooters to shoot better than that.
Right.
So, I think the team around him is like a little bit of the problem, right? The team's not great. Like Sharp is good, Brogdon's good, like, but they don't have a lot else. Aiden is not really playing like amazing. Uh, so I think they're kind of in a weird spot there. Uh, and point guards really struggle early. Like I know I said I love bringing Keontae George in the starting lineup for the Jazz, so maybe I'm being a little bit of a hypocrite here, but like it's going to take both those guys time, to run an offense. Scoot physically, I have no problems with him. I think that's like the least of my worries. He's got some length issues, like as far as his height. He's got long arms, but I do have some concerns about his height, which is it hurts offensively too, right? Like there's some concerns there about going over people, shooting over them. He's got to get used to the length of the NBA. It's tough, and yeah, I think he'll be fine. I mean, I had him as my second ranked prospect, so I guess I can't get rid of him after 5 games.
Yeah.
I think that would be bad practice, and I know you love him,
Yep.
so I already kind of know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So I will preface this with I'm going to eat a little bit of crow as part of this splash of trash. So I am trashing this, right? It's too early. It's fun to kind of talk about these things super early. And he's looked pretty bad out the gates, shooting sub 10% from three, shooting 30% from the field, playing only 5 games. It's the health thing. Is it going to be a recurring issue? You hope not, right? But I will say, I said before the season when we talked coming up to the draft that I thought that Scoot was probably going to have the better career than Wembanyama. And if I was a GM and willing to put my neck on the line, I would have taken Scoot over Vic. Now, in reality, I would not have taken that if I was a GM because I'm not putting my neck on the line with a guy like Vic available, right? So just to kind of give the context around how I feel about Scoot, Vic has looked great, and he looks like he's the guy that's been hyped. The health is always going to be a concern with guys that are that long, that tall, in the way that he plays. But good grief, when it's right, it's right. He's had some nights where he's not looked great. Growing pains as a rookie, got it. Going to happen. But Jesus Christ, some nights he looks like he's the next fucking coming of like basketball Jesus. He looks really, really good, and it looks like the Spurs again won the lottery with flying colors. They won it at the right time. So all that to say, coming back to Scoot, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. Super early. I think he's pressing. I caught one of their
yeah,
games. They don't get on TV a lot on the East Coast, and I don't have League Pass, so I'm always trying to like catch where I can get like highlights, or if I can find that they're showing a game on NBA TV, yada yada, or at least showing parts of the game on NBA TV. He looks like he's pressing, which is understandable. A lot of rookies do. You mentioned point guards. The transition's not as easy to the NBA. God, he does look like a guy who's really just trying to say, hey, guys, don't forget about me. And he's pressing a lot, taking some bad shots. His shot selection's not been great. Missing open looks, too. When he gets a really open look, he's missing them and missing them bad. I just think he's a little kind of gun shy and punch drunk right now. Give him the course of the season. I think he'll be fine. I'm trashing this, but it has looked really choppy out the gates. And I had to be honest with myself and eat a little bit of crow as part of this splash of trash. All right, last one here, a little fun one for Bentley. He's not here, but we had to shout him out. Splash of trash, Ryan. We should have all listened to Bentley about Mark Williams being a god.
again, Bentley stealing my takes again. I actually made that joke today at work when I saw him, and I told him that I was the original Mark Williams fan, and he's obviously a Duke fan, so he was much more a fan than I was. But yeah, I like Mark Williams. He was clearly right. I think he's not going to continue to shoot 80+% from the
No.
field, but defensively, he's good. He's really good with LaMelo Ball. I think it's similar to like Luca and Derek Lively in a lot of ways.
Yep.
Um, I think Mark Williams is better than Derek Lively currently, and potentially will continue to be better because I do think he has more offensive game in like the mid range and even handling the ball a little bit for a guy his size.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Mark Williams is really good, but I will not give Bentley credit for it. So that's what
We
I'll
all
say.
should have listened to Ryan.
Yeah, of course. Who cares what that guy has to say?
Yeah, no, I agree. He looks really good. Bentley's been singing his praises and trying to tell us all along. And Mark Williams is making good on it. Good defensively for a bad defensive team, but he is a guy that can at least contest at the rim, and even though nobody else on that team is willing to do so. Shout out to the over tomorrow night. Again, reminder, they're playing the Wizards, and the Hornets don't play much defense either. But yeah, shooting 83% is wild through, what have they played? 7 games, I believe, so far this year. Yeah, 7 games. Shoot 83% is pretty unbelievable. So no matter whether it keeps up or not, right? Likely not. That's still a pretty awesome stat coming out the gates through 7
Yeah.
games, shooting 83%. So Mark Williams, pretty good ball player. All right. Well, as we always do on Thursday night while the NFL season is still going, we've got to get a prediction from you. So Bentley's in absentia prediction, which made him sick to his stomach, was Bears -3.5. This is a pretty bad matchup from a football perspective. Bears versus Panthers Thursday night. Bears are 3.5-point favorites. Bentley has made his pick abundantly clear. He's got the Bears -3.5. How are you feeling about it, Ryan?
God, this was an awful game.
Oh my god.
Thursday Night Football is actually like on I think a pretty decent streak of games. Like, if you remember a couple of years ago, Thursday Night Football was always just awful games.
Always.
And then they gave it to Amazon Prime, and they were like, "Oh, we got to put some.
We got to put something.
Yeah.
This isn't one of those.
So that Jeff Bezos money is really helping out. Didn't do enough here for this week. Maybe people thought the Bears and the Panthers would be interesting from the quarterback perspective, like early in the season. But
yeah, and the DJ Moore thing, but
yeah, Justin Fields and Bryce Young. Justin Fields has been okay. Bryce Young's been mid, as the kids say. I would say. He's no CJ Stroud.
Clearly.
It's early.
Shout out CJ setting rookie records this past week. Holy
Thank
cow.
God. I hope it stays, because last time someone did this, they started getting massages and it became a problem. It's like that guy was pretty good for a while too. This is tough. 3.5. The Panthers are just not good. But 3.5 is like, pretty on nose, I think.
Yeah.
I'll agree with Bentley. That guy doesn't know a lot, but he does know gambling.
He's a degenerate.
And by that, I mean losing at it. So I'll lose with him to commiserate. I'll also take Chicago at 3.5, -3.5.
Yeah, I feel like this is a field goal game. I punted. I wagered on this game. I bet the over just because I didn't want it to be a boring game. I'm hoping like we'll get some action. I think this is like a 20 to 18, 20 to 19 type game. Give me the points. I'll take the 3.5. I think with the hook. If this was 2.5, I might lay it with the Bears because they might win by a field goal. But with it being 3.5, I'll take it with the Panthers. I don't feel great about it. I don't feel great about anything to do with this game, but I don't feel great about it. But I'm going to take the points because I do think it's going to be a field goal game.
I agree. For more center talk, Bradley Bozeman, that guy's legit. That's a real Alabama boy right there.
Yeah.
He looks all 275 pounds. I'm just guessing how much he weighs, but that's my rough
For
guess.
sure.
That's probably a little big for a center. Maybe 260.
Maybe. All right, bud. What any closing thoughts here on the way out the door?
We covered a lot. We hit almost every team today. And really, I'm pretty verbose, so it's nice not to have Bentley talking so I can get in all my opinions. Because I like to talk, and it's a problem. But yeah, great show. Thanks for having me as always. I always enjoy it. And like I said, this is the longest job I've ever had. So I'm happy to be back here next week.
Well, hey man, appreciate you joining. Appreciate all the talk about ball. It's great to get on the show every week with you guys and chat basketball. Appreciate all the comments in the chat, the center talk. It's always fun. Dad, appreciate you as well. For Ryan and Bentley, who couldn't be here, and the rest of the Backyard family, we are